හරිම සුළුයි.
Tonight on First at 9 this Thursday, the 16th of November 2023. Bond scam, domestic debt optimization made the banking system and financial sector rich, alleges Rauf Hakim.
The domestic debt optimization was the third and the largest bond scam.
Finance State Minister denies allegations.
If we had not gone through the DDO, Honorable Rauf Hakim, the country would have collapsed within 48 hours.
Budget 2024. President Ranil Wickremesinghe expresses confidence on the budget proposals.
Some say this is election budget. This is more budget for a new economy.
Expects favourable outcomes with bilateral creditor negotiations. Mark Macro. Budget 2024 focuses on macroeconomic stability, says the former central bank director.
We are continuing with kind of a stabilization program.
Tourism spike. Sri Lanka tourism targets to be the highest foreign exchange earner to the country by 2027.
We have set our targets to register 5 million tourist arrivals by the year 2029.
ඔබේ විශ්වාසය දෙනු සෙන්සුරයින් දැන් ළඟමැති ෆාමසියෙන් ලබාගත හැක.
This is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and a warm welcome to you from AdaDerana's English News First at 9. I'm Jonathan Benedict. Let's take a look at our stories for the evening, starting with our top story for the night. The domestic debt optimization was the largest bond scam in the country. These were the thoughts that were detonated by Samagi Janabalawege parliamentarian Rauf Hakim. He made this claim after highlighting the inordinate profits that the banking sector, financial institutions and primary dealers accrued from the domestic debt optimization program of the government. However, State Minister of Finance Shehan Semasinghe denied these allegations, highlighting that the domestic debt restructuring was the need of the hour to prevent the country from collapsing further. The State Minister also said that the domestic debt optimization was essential to expedite debt restructuring with external creditors.
We are moving from stability to growth. The relief measures that have been announced now in the budget include 1.3 million public sector employees, 700,000 pensioners, as well as Aswasuma, cost of which will go up to 183 billion from 60 billion. 3 times we are increasing the allocations for relief. These sectors, relief to these sectors to ease the present cost of living, which have recorded an increase during the last 2 years. We accept. All the reports have shown the difficulties the public is going through. That's why whether we will cushion this sector or people who need relief, people who are working, such sectors has been recognized and a massive allocation has been granted in the budget. Small and medium scale enterprises will also be getting the boost as the ADB has agreed to give us the necessary funds. Towards assisting this sector, another 30 billion assistance comes from the ADB. With other allocation, a total of rupees 250 billion has been allocated for this sector. The proposed capital infusion of BOC and People's Bank will not only result greater banking stability, it will pave the way for these banking giants of our country to invest in advanced technology, which already the private sector banks have started implementing. That they are gaining what they could have gained as a result of technological input.
The impact of the domestic debt optimization issue. When the President, who as a finance minister took this step to hit the private sector below the belt and ransacked the poor workers, the part of their future benefits from the DDO, he rejoiced that he had paved the way to conclude the debt restructuring. To date, none, and this House is aware of the status quo of the debt restructuring. He says in the budget that he is expecting it to be completed by December. And if it doesn't happen by December, God forbid, we'll be in deeper trouble. The sad part of the assault on the bellies of the private sector EPF, ETF account holders is that a certain segment of investment community made windfall gains because of the domestic debt restructuring decision. Honourable Presiding Member, I would like to ask the President, who is also the Finance Minister, to disclose to this House the quantum of profits made based on capital gains by the banking sector, the non-bank financial institutions, the primary dealers and private investors out of their investments in government bonds as at quarter ended June 2023, post the assault on the superannuation funds. I can tell you the amount of windfall capital gains made by the segment. It is beyond comprehension. The vibe in the capital markets, Honourable Presiding Member, is that the domestic debt optimization was the third and the largest bond scam. Now this type of scams, now we have the International Monetary Fund talking about the governance diagnostic report. Now one of the important features of the governance diagnostic report is to have a proper awareness about the corruption vulnerabilities and address them. Now, having promised the IMF that we are going to address our corruption vulnerabilities, and we are repeatedly allowing certain segment of people, on the one side on the DDO, you allow the primary bondholders, the primary dealers, some of our private banks and financial institutions to make a windfall.
On this specific note on the DDO, I deny your allegation, and there was nothing. No, the numbers were given. The numbers were discussed at the Public Finance Committee. The numbers were divulged to the Parliament. The proposal itself we debated. So the problem is, your suggestion, what you are making, was not considered. That was a different scenario altogether. I mean, you have all the right to propose. But on the DDO, if we had not gone through the DDO, Honourable Rauf Hakim, the country would have collapsed within 48 hours, because that wouldn't have paved way for us for going to a debt restructuring on external debt, which was very crucial for us. So the DDO was very crucial, as well as the external debt restructuring. And on the other hand, yes, there is a diagnostic report from the IMF, which the report has been published by the government, and we are taking all the measures to ensure that we take all the steps to mitigate corruption in the country.
I am not at cross purposes in the entire DDO concept itself, but then this particular issue of the windfall profits made by the primary dealers, the banks and some of the financial institutions, the quantum is so large. That is why I call this a third bond scam, because everybody is silent about it. And why don't you at least land a super tax on them? Super tax on the monies they have made. Massive amounts have been made.
That is your view. I mean, you have all the right to propose. No, you have all the right to propose. But do you know, I'm sure you are aware of it, when the DDO was presented to Parliament, when it was passed, everybody was happy with the DDO which was presented by the government.
But he objected.
No, you objected. I mean, you have been objecting to most of the cases, not you, specifically the team. So let us work out other matters, how we could strengthen the economy. If we had not gone through the DDO, the way we went through, the country's economy would have been in a catastrophe again.
Staying on topic, President Ranil Wickremesinghe, commenting on the economy, stated that it cannot be guided towards recovery through merely a budget, adding that proposals made by him aren't solely for the purpose of economic stabilization. He went on to stress the importance of adapting to proposals brought forward through the 2024 budget, despite their unpopularity.
The Budget 2022 Forum under the theme A Tightrope Walk, organised by the Colombo University MBA Alumni Association, was held in Colombo under the patronage of President Ranil Wickremesinghe.
So what I have done is to first stabilize the economy and reconstruct the economy. To do that, you can't do it in a budget. No. The first was coming to an agreement with the IMF last year. In September, after doing so, I made the first statement in the House. Second was the budget of last year. We've come to the last stages of the bilateral negotiations. We have got responses from everyone, including China, and we hope then they sit in December this year that there will be positive results. We have to live within our means. This government or next government or government after that. And that's what we want to introduce. However difficult it is to tell the country this is what you have to do. It may be unpopular, but you have to do it. You have to take a lot of unpopular decisions. But it's going more than that. The speech I made and the proposals I made is not merely about stabilizing the economy. It is the new economy that we are going to reconstruct. And I will deal mainly with that, leaving the technical issues to the ST. We have to look out. Some say this is election budget. This is more budget for for a new economy in which the people have benefited. You had to give a pay increase to the government servants. I would have liked to have given more, but I'm not in a position to do so. Even this, we have to start paying gradually after the first 3 months. To give the pensioners, you must realize how difficult it is for people to live. You know that in your own places. As far as the private sector is concerned, I think it's up to you because some of you have already made adjustments. We hope the others will make adjustments, but we will intervene and I will speak to the plantation companies which come under the finance ministry now in regard to the plantation workers. So those are pay increases that we have to give. In the process of privatizing, we'll ensure some part is given to the employees, but depositors must also have the ability to buy the shares. We'll make a special concession on that. It's a national effort. Either we get out of this and go in a new direction or we fall, because you can stabilize the economy, you can have debt sustainability. If your balance of trade is against you and you haven't got your budget is in deficit, look, in the long run, you can write it off. We are setting up a panel to look at a tropical belt. An idea that if we focus all the resources on the tropical belt, which is the most biologically diverse area, then the impact will also be on the other parts of the world. So we are going ahead with it. These are commitment. We can't just depend on one budget to turn the economy up. Budget is only what the government is going to do, which will have an impact on the private sector and the financial world. But that's not the only issue. The crisis was too big for us to deal it in one budget. You can't. You have to change. So that's what you have to realize, that we have to change, and this is the direction we are going in.
The former director of the central bank, Dr. Roshan Pereira, confirmed that the presented 78th budget of the country is mainly focused on continuing the macroeconomic stability that Sri Lanka has achieved over the past few months. Dr. Pereira also noted that through the budget proposal, the government should also focus on providing more room for economic growth through the country's fiscal policy. She further observed that per the budget presented on Monday regarding tax revenue, the challenging objective of achieving targets will be crucial to keep abreast with the International Monetary Fund's extended fund facility.
There is objection from the opposition that this budget doesn't really look at providing relief for the masses, and on the other end there are questions whether government was honest about the revenue generation mechanisms. But what really is your view here about the overall formulation of this budget?
As I said at the beginning, I think we are continuing with kind of a stabilization program. So if you look at generally the objectives of fiscal policy, it's macroeconomic stabilization, and in our context, fiscal stabilization sustainability is an important component, because Sri Lanka has basically been living beyond their our means. We have had budget deficits almost from the beginning of independence history, which has basically brought us to where we are, because we have had to borrow and we have had huge increases in debt. So I think that macro stabilization is the most important objective of this current budget. But of course, a budget or a fiscal policy should also allocate resources to foster more inclusive and sustainable growth, and also, as you said, distribute resources in an equitable manner. But I think if you look at this budget, I think the focus has been to continue with this macro stabilization, because we are in this IMF program, and under the IMF program there are very strict targets in terms of what we have to achieve on the fiscal. So reining in the fiscal, making it more sustainable. We have to achieve a primary balance next year, and then of 0.8% or just under 1%, and then of course it has to improve even further to, I think, 2.5% over the medium term. And those are very challenging targets. So in order to do that, we have to make sure that we stick to this program and ensure that we achieve this kind of sustainability, these targets. But basically, to achieve this primary surplus, we have to generate sufficient revenue, because we have not a lot of leeway on the expenditure side. There's limited leeway. So revenue generation is critical. And even in the IMF program, I think it's termed a revenue-based fiscal consolidation, or centered fiscal consolidation. So if you look at the revenue targets, basically it's quite ambitious. They expect, because this year, as you know from the first review of the IMF program, it was found that basically we are going to even fall short of the revenue collection in 2023. And that was one reason why they delayed the release of the second tranche of the IMF. So even this year we are going to fall short of our revenue targets. And this is after we put in quite a lot of new revenue measures, right? Just You remember the income taxes, the various other taxes that were revised in order to bring in additional revenue. And I think the increase in revenue that we expected last year was something, it was close to 50%, 48%, or we increased revenue by about 48%. This year the increase on top of that is another 47%. So that is quite challenging.
Now on to the hot topic of cricket. The case filed pertaining to the Sri Lanka Cricket Interim Committee is due to be taken up before the Court of Appeal on the 20th of November. The case is slated to be heard before an appellate court bench comprising of judges Sobita Rajakaruna and D.N. Samarakun per a decision made by the President of the Court of Appeal. So far, 3 judges, including the Appeals Court President and Judge Neil Idavella, have recused themselves from the hearing of this case. Last week, the Court of Appeal issued a 14-day stay order preventing the operation of the 7-member interim committee appointed to the SLC and the relevant gazette notification issued by Sports Minister Roshan Ranasinghe in this regard. The order was issued upon consideration of a writ petition filed by the chairman of SLC, Shammi Silva. Subsequently, on the 13th of November, Sports Minister Roshan Ranasinghe filed a motion requesting the lifting of the stay order issued by the Court of Appeal, preventing the operation of the 7-member interim committee appointed by him for the SLC and the relevant gazette notification published in this regard. The motion, including the objections related to the relevant stay order, has been filed before the Appeals Court through Attorney-at-Law G.G. Arupragasam. The Colombo Chief Magistrates Court has ordered the 5 directors of the company Onmax DT, who were arrested over allegations concerning a fraudulent pyramid scheme, to be released on bail. This order was issued by Colombo Chief Magistrate Prasanna Alvis when the case was taken up today. As such, the Chief Magistrate, who ordered each suspect to be released on 3 bail bonds of 10 million rupees each, also imposed a bail condition that the suspects should report to the Criminal Investigation Department on the last Sunday of every month. The 5 suspects in question were arrested on the 3rd of November by the Financial Crimes Investigation Department over charges of a fraudulent pyramid scheme. This comes on the back of news development. News first at 9 carried out on the 24th of August this year. The Central Bank of Sri Lanka banned 9 entities, including Onmax DT, that have conducted pyramid schemes which are prohibited in the country, warning that any person who directly or indirectly initiates, offers, promotes, advertises, conducts, finances, manages or directs a prohibited type of pyramid scheme shall be guilty of a punishable offence. Speaker Mahinda Yapa Abewardena says that an investigation will be done as to the participation of the Committee on Public Enterprises Chairman Professor Ranjit Bandara's son Kanishka Bandara during the recent meeting held with Sri Lanka cricket officials. The issue was raised in the House by opposition leader Sajid Premadasa, who claimed that Professor Bandara's son had no right to sit amongst the members of the COPE. Meanwhile, COPE committee members in Parliament today said that they will no longer participate in COPE activities until the dismissal of Professor Bandara as the chairman.
During the third day on the budget debate, opposition leader questioned the participation of the COPE committee chairman Professor Ranjit Bandara's son Kanishka Bandara in the recent meeting held with Sri Lanka cricket.
මම දැක්ක රූපරාමුවල දේශ මන්ත්‍රීතුමයි මරික්කාර මන්ත්‍රීතුමයි පිටිපස්සේ එක පුද්ගලෙක් වාඩි වෙලා ඉන්නවා. මට එනවා විදේශ රටකින් කෝල් එකක් කොහොමද මේ මහාචාර්ය රංජිත් බණ්ඩාර කෝප් එකේ සභාපතිතුමාගේ පුතා කොහොමද කෝප් එකේ වාඩි වෙන්නේ කියලා. කනිෂ්ක බණ්ඩාර මහත්මයා පබ්ලික් ෆිනෑන්ස් කමිටි එකට මට ඒක ඇතුලේ කතා කරන්න පුළුවන්ද බැරිද කියන එක ගැන ඡන්දෙකුත් අරගෙන මගේ කට වැහුවා. එන්න විතරක් පුළුවන් කිව්වා. කො මගේ වරප්‍රසාද මොකද්ද ඔහුට තියෙන අයිතිය කෝප් එකට එන්න. කරුණාකරලා උත්තර දෙන්න කරු කතා නැතුව.
පිටස්තර කෙනෙකුට ඉඳගෙන ඒක අයිතියක් නෑ. එතුමා කියලා තියනවලු එයාගේ ප්‍රවෘත්ති ලේකම් කියලා. එයා
මටත් පුළුවන් ද ප්‍රවෘත්ති ලේකම් සම්බන්ධීකරණ ලේකම් අරගෙන කන්සල්ටටිව් කමිටුස් වලට යන්න.
ඔබතුමාට ඒ අවස්ථාව නොදීපු ගැන අපි සොයලා බැලුවා. ඒක වැරදි.
නෑ කනගාටුවෙන් මට වැඩක් නෑ. මෙතුමාට සදාචාර සම්පන්න අයිතියක් නෑ කෝප් එකේ චෙයාමන් වෙන්න.
එයාගෙන් ප්‍රකාශයක් අපිට ගන්න වෙනවා. ඒ සේරම අරගෙන ඉවරලා අපි මේ සම්බන්ධයෙන් තීන්දුවක් දෙන්නම් ඔබතුමාට.
කෝප් කමිටුවේ සාමූහික තීන්දුවක් කරන් තියෙනවා කිසිම මාධ්‍ය අදාළ කෙනෙක් ගේන්නේ නෑ මේකට කියලා. අපි කෝප් කමිටුව විදියට විශේෂයෙන් ක්‍රිකට් සම්බන්ධව රංජිත් බණ්ඩාර මැතිතුමා මුලසුනේ ඉන්නවා නම් අපි සූදානම් නෑ ඒක තවදුරටත් ඉදිරියට ගෙනියන්න.
However, Professor Ranjit Bandara, issuing a statement regarding the participation of his son at the Co-op committee meetings, said that according to his request, the Assistant Sergeant at Arms of Parliament had granted permission to his coordinating secretary Kanishka Bandara to stay on during the 13th of October 2022 meeting. Further, Professor Bandara said that Kanishka Bandara had attended past Co-op committee meetings which were held that addressed other subjects.
Now in some sad news, the body of a student who was reported dead after a wall collapsed onto her was brought home to her residence today. The grade 1 student of the Veheragoda Vidyala in Vellampettiya died after a wall attached to the construction of taps collapsed onto her yesterday. Another 4 students out of 5 who were injured during the incident were admitted to the Colombo National Hospital for treatment. Authorities have since stated that the situation of the students remains critical. Tragically, the deceased child was to celebrate her 6th birthday yesterday. Meanwhile, a committee led by the Western Provincial Education Director, which was appointed by the Minister of Education Dr. Susil Premajayantha, arrived at the school during the morning hours today to carry out an investigation. Following investigations, the minister revealed that 74 schools with such unsafe buildings have been identified. The Consumer Affairs Authority says that a total of 200 million rupees has been collected as fines from raids carried out across the island so far this year to date. These are fines that have been levied for various nefarious activity, including selling goods at above the maximum retail price. Meanwhile, Sri Lanka Customs seized a consignment of cannabis from the Hindu Kush region at the Orogodawata Customs Inspection Terminal. With that, let's take a brief look at developments from around the island.
The Consumer Affairs Authority stated that a total of 200 million rupees was collected as fines from raids carried out island-wide so far in 2023 as of October. The CAA further clarified that the fines were levied for various illegal activities including the hoarding of stocks, selling goods at prices higher than the relevant maximum retail prices, as well as selling expired goods and not displaying the prices of goods being sold. They further noted that of the 22,000 raids conducted between January and October, 19,000 have ended in court cases being filed against the respective persons. Sri Lanka Customs meanwhile seized a consignment of 6 kilograms of Kush cannabis, which is allegedly sent from Canada to an address in Ganemulla. In an attempt to clear the package which contained the consignment of drugs at the Orogodawata Customs Inspection Terminal, an individual was placed under arrest. Sri Lanka Customs revealed that the consignment of drugs is valued at 60 million rupees.
Sri Lanka has been elected to the Executive Board of the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization for the term 2023 to 2027 during the 42nd General and Conference of the Intergovernmental Organization held yesterday in Paris. Issuing a statement, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs stated that Sri Lanka obtained 144 votes out of 188 member states voting at the said election, co-securing the third highest vote count from the region with Bangladesh. The member states of the UNESCO elected 6 members out of 9 candidates from the Asia-Pacific region to the UNESCO Executive Board. The other countries who were elected from the region are Pakistan, Indonesia, Bangladesh, the Republic of Korea and Australia. Sri Lanka last served on the Executive Board from 2015 to 2019, it added. Worthy to note is that in the past months, Sri Lanka has been successful in consecutively being elected to 3 UN bodies or committees, which include the Committee on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, the Committee on the Protection of the Rights of All Migrant Workers and members of their families, and the UNESCO Executive Board. Deputy High Commissioner of Sri Lanka in southern India, D. Venkateshwaran, yesterday said that talks are underway to revive direct flight connections from Coimbatore to Sri Lanka as part of a slew of incentives the island nation is providing to Indian businesses to encourage bilateral trade and investments. India's Hindu newspaper reported that speaking at the Coimbatore Indian Chamber of Commerce and the industry's 14th council meeting, Venkateshwaran highlighted the reasons as to why Indian entrepreneurs should invest in Sri Lanka despite the economic challenges. Venkateshwaran has highlighted the advancement the nation has achieved in skill development among the nation's youth population and the development of tourism and the real estate sectors. He also said that Sri Lanka is focusing on providing skilled personnel that can help businesses that can come to Sri Lanka and at the same time piggyback off the success the country is facing with the economy while it's slowly picking up with the support of the tourism sector. Following the recent resurgence of Sri Lanka tourism, the chairman of Sri Lanka Tourism Development Authority, Priyantha Fernando, expressed confidence in achieving tourist arrival targets for the 2023 year. Addressing the launch of Volume 11 of the book, Foreign Policy Perspectives on Tourism and Hospitality, Fernando said that Sri Lanka tourism aims to be the #1 foreign exchange earner for Sri Lanka in 2027 and aims to attract a whopping 5 million annual tourists by 2029.
The launch of Volume 11 of the book titled Foreign Policy Perspectives on Tourism and Hospitality, published by the Lanka Ambassadors Forum in the United Kingdom, was held recently at the Speaker's residence in Battaramulla. During the event, awards were presented to several personalities including renowned Sri Lanka chef Publi Silva for their service to the nation.
Next is very important. The next volume will be on legal education, law and order, legal aid, loss delays, which is very important, and it will be published in January. In 2022, in spite of all the setbacks, we registered 720,000 arrivals, and up to now today, we are just under 1.2 million arrivals. The target that we set was 1,150,000, and we are hopeful that we will be able to exceed the target. The major marketing campaigns have been launched in 9 major destinations, but the problems is not creating the demand. We have other problems like ferrying them across to Sri Lanka because we are short of air seat capacity from some of the major generating markets. We had over 50 airlines operating prior to all these problems, which is down to about 30 airlines now. And also Sri Lankan, they have their own problems where they were operating with a fleet of 32, which is down to 19. They carry 33% of the tourist traffic to the country. So we are fighting hard against all odds and are quite confident that we'll be able to make a significant contribution. Up to now, we have contributed with $1.5 billion earnings to the economy, and we are in the second position as the second largest foreign exchange earner for the economy. We have set our targets to be the largest foreign exchange earner for the economy by 2027 and to register 5 million tourist arrivals by the year 2029. I can say that the industry is quite capable of reviving and coming out of the mess. They have many difficulties which we are trying to support. Currently, the industry is in debt to the tune of almost 700 billion, where the government intervention is required to get them out of trouble. The minister and all stakeholders are working hand in hand to pull the industry out of where they were a few years ago, and I'm glad to say we are on the correct track.
With the IORA, Indian Ocean Rim Circle countries, we are seriously looking at tourism as a main segment. And we have taken tourism as an outreach and a connectivity program where all those countries are now connected to us as our fraternal friends who are now working with us on the tourism plan.
The Colombo Stock Exchange ended lower today, dragged down by losses in capital goods and financial market stocks. The CSE All-Share Index closed down 0.57% at 10,662.08 points, while the S&P SL20 closed down 0.64% at 3,007.37 points. Richard Pearce and Company and John Keel's Holdings were the top losers on the CSE, All-Share falling 4.31% and 1.17% respectively. Trading volume on the CSE All-Share Index increased to 68.4 million shares from 19.6 million shares in the previous session. Equity market turnover rose to 1.1 billion rupees from 787.2 million rupees in the previous session. Foreign investors were net sellers, offloading stocks worth 119 million rupees, while domestic investors were net buyers, purchasing shares worth 997 million rupees. With that, let's take a look at how the rupee traded against other major currencies as the day progressed. The Information and Communications Technology Agency of Sri Lanka renewed its partnership with Brandix Apparel Limited for the second consecutive year to provide essential funding for technology startups in the country. That and more corporate sector news for today coming up.
The Information and Communication Technology Agency of Sri Lanka renewed its partnership with Brandix Apparel Limited for the second consecutive year. The strategic alliance aims to support startups by providing essential funding and fostering their expansion. The primary focus is to fuel technological entrepreneurship within Sri Lanka, propelling its future digital economy. The initiative encompasses seed funding, specialized training, networking opportunities, and avenues for business promotion on both local and international fronts. The memorandum was signed by Chairman of ICTA Professor Malik Ranasinghe and Managing Director of Fortitude and Director IT Digital of Brandix Arjuna Sirinanda. Meanwhile, the National Development Bank PLC has won the Grand Prix Award for the third time in 4 years for cross-platform integration at the Slim Digis 2.3 Awards night held recently. In addition to the coveted Grand Prix, the bank also secured the Gold Award at the ceremony in cross-platform integration and was also honoured with the Silver Award in banking and finance sector and a Merit Award in cross-platform integration. Meanwhile, Sunshine Holdings PLC announced the appointment of Arani Gunathilaka as the newest addition to its board of directors. Issuing a statement, the firm said that with over 25 years of experience in global financial markets, Gunathilaka brings expertise in governance, enterprise risk management, internal audit and credit analysis. She has worked in senior transformational roles in global and local banks in Singapore and Sri Lanka and across several geographies in her credit and an internal audit role with Standard Chartered Bank in Singapore.
That's all the news I have for tonight. Have a blessed Friday ahead. I'm Jonathan Benedict. Good night.